Welcome back from the break. Now, you guys know when you see me super hyped right after the break, it's time for conversations. Today, I'm going to be talking to somebody that is actually part of the Life and Style family here, and that is Shalini. Yes, the wonderful, wonderful Shalini that takes you through 5 minutes of mindfulness. Well, now we're going to get a whole 26 minutes of mindfulness. Let's go and say hello. Very excited to introduce none other than Shalini Balla Lucas. She is an award-winning author. She's also an entrepreneur, but she's the founder of Just You. You guys must know her because that's also her social media handle. So if you've been paying attention to the mindfulness sessions on this show, I hope you're ready because now you're going to get a much bigger session and a much longer time to get to speak to her, and I'm very excited. Hi, Shalini.
Hi, Susan. Thank you so much. What an introduction. I'm feeling suddenly very nervous.
Oh, you're like, I don't know if I'm that chick that you just...
I don't know who this person is, right? I'm going to have to do my 1 minute breathing before we carry on. Breathe, child.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for doing this interview. How have you been? How have you been over the last couple of months?
It's really interesting, right? I've been really good. There have been a lot of people out there struggling and stuff. It's been a fantastic 2 or 3 months. And I think part of it is the mindfulness has kept me mindful and sane and happy. Being on KTN is a complete blessing, I can't tell you. And just meeting people like you, I feel like I know you, Susan, and yet we've only met virtually and on Twitter and on KTN. And even Laura and Nixie, I feel like I know everybody. It's a very strange world we're living in. But yes, things are good.
Yeah, it's true. I do feel like I know you as well. It's so interesting. Like, I feel like if I went back to work normally and we were on set and I saw you there, I'd be like, yeah, that's Shalini. Like, that's my home.
Yeah. And
So,
hopefully by then we'll be able to give each other a hug. It won't be this kind of,
yes.
you know.
Yeah, I hope so too. So you are the founder of Just June. And I want to know, first of all, what is Just June? Where does that come from? What does it mean?
Okay, so Just June is a Bollywood dance fitness program that I created 10 years ago, 2010. Just June means to dance in Hindi. And it's all about Bollywood dancing. It's fun, it's tongue-in-cheek, it's a great fitness workout. And I've had a lot of requests to bring it to Nairobi, and I'm thinking about it.
I like that. We're glad. We're excited. That's awesome. I like also that if it means dance and then it's like just June, like it's like just dance. Like don't overthink it. Don't just dance.
That's it. Just dance.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly that. And it's an interesting one because it was a style of dance that was being created around the world, but nobody was actually really honing in on the technique and the syllabus. So I created that first syllabus of its kind, and I trained 300 instructors in the UK. So that was the last 10 years. That's what that's been about, really.
That's massive, and that's a lot of people. That's incredible. So every morning, right here on KTN Life and Style, you take us through 5 minutes of mindfulness. For everyone watching, you see us tweeting about it. Most of the time, me, Nixie, and Laura are not being very mindful or being more jokey and laughy about it.
But yeah, no, I love it.
Yeah, but the sessions have actually been very helpful. Like I practice some of the things that I've learned. But what I want to know is, what made you first aware of your own mindfulness?
That's a really good question. So I suffered from depression in my late 20s, and I was a very career-minded person working in recruitment. Mm-hmm. And I was also estranged from my family because of my choice of man and my choice of lifestyle. So I went through this breakdown. And when I came out of hospital, because I was hospitalized for a month, I came home and I would make masala chai on the stove. And I'd make it the way I remember my mom making it. So hot water and then the different spices and then the black tea leaves and then the milk and the sugar. And I'd watch it really brew. Right. And then I would put that into a mug and then spend 10, 15 minutes just drinking tea. And that's all I focused on for that 15 minutes was that cup of tea. And what I was doing was practicing mindfulness without realizing it. And my mind began to heal from the depression because I was focusing on the present moment. that's what mindfulness is. And I wasn't worried about the future, and I had no regrets about that past. In those 15, 20 minutes, all that mattered was my cup of tea. And so when I realized that that was helping me, I thought there must be something to this. And I started looking at meditation and mindfulness, which really helped my life. I went back to dancing, which I had given up for a while. And I then became an accredited mindfulness teacher. And I have since used mindfulness a lot. My husband, Jeremy, passed away 4 years ago. And I would say dance and mindfulness have been my saving grace that really helped me move forward with my life.
That's amazing. I really enjoy my cup of coffee in the morning. So I might also have been practicing mindfulness without realizing, because sometimes I take the cup of coffee, and whether I'm going to go back and sit in bed and drink it or sit at the dining table, it's just always like a moment. Like, I want to be zen. I don't want my siblings or my parents or my boyfriend, nobody talking to me. I'm like, it's me and my coffee, okay?
That's it. That's mindfulness. You're there. I don't need to teach you anything, Susan. You're there.
Hey, guys, have you heard? I'm zen, I'm mindful. Hello. So you have little hacks though, and little tricks that you talk about in your 5 minutes of mindfulness that I actually like. That whatever it is you have to teach has to fit within the 5 minutes. And there's the really nice like raisin trick that you taught of being able to meditate and focus. And I asked about whether I could do it with a drumstick because I prefer to do it with chicken.
You know what? Did you do it with the drumstick? Did you do it with the chicken?
I did actually.
Did you enjoy it?
It was amazing. I actually feel like I got a new further appreciation for chicken. Like, I felt the textures in the chicken that sometimes it just, pass through.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Okay, so if you think we spend most of our life in autopilot, so you get in the car and you drive to your destination and you haven't even realized that you're on the journey. Right. That's how our life is. We're not on the journey. We're so worried about the destination, about getting the good job, about making the money, about buying the house, buying the car, getting the children to college. We forget that we need to really go through the journey. And the journey is about enjoying the simple things. When I ask people what really gave them pleasure today, they'll say, oh, I had this cup of tea in the sunshine, or I had a chat with my friend. And we will often, so how many times, Susan, you have to be honest here, how many times have you opened a packet of crisps, eaten the crisps, and before you know it, you're at the last crisp and you're like, where are they gone? Or the chocolate bar, and you start the chocolate bar, and before you know it, you're at the end, you're like, where's the chocolate? Or for me, it's the glass of wine. I'll pour myself a glass of wine, drink the wine, before I know it, hey, who finished the bottle? It wasn't me. But it was, because I was eating or drinking mindlessly. So it's about really bringing mindfulness to that moment, and enjoying everything and savoring everything. And you find you might not need more than a glass of wine. You just need that one glass is enough. And that chicken drumstick was probably the best one you'd ever tasted.
So good. That's incredible. So before we had this interview yesterday, we had a conversation. And there's something that hit me while we were talking, because we spoke about your husband, Jeremy, passing on 4 years ago. But one of the things that struck me was we talked a little bit about the Asian community, the Indian community. And I thought about how there's all this education on chakras and meditation. And, you think about people like Gandhi. And I'm just wondering, is there a relationship between mindfulness and culture? Or, because I'm like, here in Africa, that's not something we're known for. So is mindfulness culture specific?
So it used to be. It came from 2,500 years ago from Buddha, so Buddha's teaching, and it came through Buddhism. But actually, if you really look at what mindfulness is, there's a scientific explanation, but there's also a human, what I call a humanist explanation, so that I like to take it away from culture and religion. Right. Because I think culture and religion, people can go, that's not for me. Mm-hmm. What I want to say to people is, when you have, say your body is unwell, you go to the doctor, right? You fix your body. What we're doing with mindfulness is we're just making sure our mind is well. And we do that by training our mind, our brain. So our brain is the biggest organ in the body, but you treat it like a muscle. So if I went to the gym every day and I lifted weights, in 8 weeks, my muscles would be toned. that's what I need to do with my brain. I need to train my brain to be present, not worried about the future, not regretting the past, but really enjoying now. And that way of mindfulness is actually training the brain. And they've shown that after 8 weeks, the brain actually physically changes. So that I don't have to consciously be mindful. I will just be mindful about my actions, my thoughts, my words. I'm just mindful. I live a mindful life. And so you live a happier life. So there is a scientific side to it. Just because Buddha spoke about it 2,500 years ago does not mean that it's tied to that culture. Because also from a human point of view, isn't it better to live in the present, to be more mindful and to be more compassionate and tolerant, which is what mindfulness helps with. It helps with that. If I'm compassionate to myself and tolerant as a person to myself, then I'm going to be more compassionate and loving to other people. And that's what mindfulness teaches you. So that goes beyond cultures. It goes beyond religion. It goes beyond the color of our skin, right? That's about being human.
That's true. I completely agree. Even with being present, I think if you look at all cultures, there's always a way, even when you're children or they're in school or they're doing a drawing or they're coloring or it's nap time, it's like focus. You have a schedule so that when you're in this moment, you're doing this. When you're eating, it's eating. When you're sleeping, you're sleeping. If you're coloring, you're coloring. And there's a reason that we've all taught ourselves and our children that way. It just makes sense. And I like what you said about the brain being a muscle. So obviously, the more we exercise mindfulness, the more mindful we will be. So I love that. Now I want to shout out my producer, Charity Mina. Me and Charity learned, and I'll admit it on this interview live, we learned about International Widows Day through you. I had no idea that that is a thing on the calendar whatsoever. But then I thought about how many widows I personally know. So I was like, I know so many widows, there must be an International Widows Day. It only makes sense. So what I want to know is, I learned about the Widows Day and the United Nations ratifying the International Widows Day. And the day is essentially a day when we look at widows and the extreme poverty and discrimination that they face all around the world. What I want to know is, as I've said, I know several widows. So within our culture and within our community, how can we help and how can we ensure that widows stop being forgotten?
I think that's exactly the question. They're being forgotten, right? They are a hidden and a vulnerable demographic that no government talks about, nobody talks about. There's something like, I think, looking at the last statistics, 250 million widows in the world, of which 40 million live in abject poverty. They have nothing. And many of those widows who have nothing live in Southeast Asia, in India, in Africa as well. They are discriminated against by, so let me just explain to you, Susan. When I lost Jeremy, I lost, for me, everything. I felt like I'd lost everything. I lost a part of me, right? He died, a part of me died with him. But the truth is, I was actually an independent woman. He made sure that financially I was okay for a few years. I had a home that I could live in. I had my just due, my business. I was able to make decisions for myself. I was independent and empowered. Many women will lose their husbands and also lose their livelihood, their homes. Their children will be snatched away by in-laws. They are seen as cursed in many cultures. That includes here in parts of Kenya and also in places like India. The Asian community here in Kenya have issues like that, that you are now cursed, you can't go to a celebration, you can't come to a wedding. So suddenly this woman is ostracized for no fault of her own. She didn't choose to leave her husband, right? So she loses everything. So International Widows Day was created for the awareness of this very thing. And every time I've spoken about how widows are treated around the world, people are shocked. Women are shocked, people are shocked that actually widows are treated that way. So International Widows Day is about raising awareness. It's also about talking about it. It's also about not stigmatizing widows. The fact that this person is a widow, don't stop talking to her. Don't stop not inviting her to your parties. Don't stop interacting with her, but also raising awareness. For example, in Western Kenya, there is a culture. And there's a woman who works there. I'm going to be interviewing her soon on Insta Live. And she talks about women being sexually cleansed because they're seen as dirty and cursed when they've been widowed. These are practices that we need to eliminate. They do not serve a purpose in our life today or at any time, actually.
That's very true. Very, very true. I think I agree with you when you say people are shocked, because even me, I was like, this is not something that I actively think about. However, when you talked about widows being looked at like it's their fault that their husband passed, or widows being looked at like if you spend time with that person, your life will be like that. Even you, your husband will pass on, or whatever other wild ideas we have. And I know it happens to men as well who lose their wives, but for men, they're not exactly marked as cursed or tainted like women tend to be. So I think what you're doing is great, and I think it is a massive conversation and something that definitely has to be had more and more often. Now, what I read as well is things are getting worse, right, because of the pandemic. So in pandemics past, like HIV, AIDS, or like Ebola, there were several women left, with their dependents, without husbands. And I think about it and I'm like, even with COVID-19, the statistics show there's actually more men that have passed from COVID-19, which therefore means there are very many widows. So what I want to know is, how can you advise an individual like me to go about changing my mindset about widows, and how would I best support a widow in my life? Like you talked about inviting them to parties and everything, but is there something we can do community-wise that can actually make sure the widows in our lives are taken care of?
I think a lot of it is going online and seeing what's available in your country. It's different in different countries. For example, here in this country, there's Rona Foundation, which is run by a woman called Rosaline, who's a widows activist. So
Right.
she is actively trying to make things better for widows. So if you want to donate, then donate to a charity or an NGO that you know that the money will go to the right place. But I think it goes before even becoming widows, right? I think it's about empowering our young women today to be independent, to say, get an education, get a job, do not be financially independent or dependent on a man, be independent. If you get married, when you get married, then don't be dependent on your husband for everything. Put some money away, be financially independent. Do not depend on your in-laws. Have that empowerment. Empower yourself as a woman before you even go into a marriage. Because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen to your husband. You don't know what's going to happen to you, your family. But whatever you do, one of the things that really ties us to families and we cannot leave, especially with things like domestic violence, widowhood, is financial. I can't leave this abusive relationship because I have no money. I can't leave this being with my in-laws after my husband dies because I have no money. Right. Don't put yourself in that position. So it's starting much earlier. It's actually saying, I want to live an independent, empowered life from a young woman all the way through my life. That, I think that's key. So it's, yes, support the widows now, very much talk about them, seek out what's happening in your country, seek out what's happening here in Kenya, see right. what's happening. But let's start young and let's start telling women that you are worth more than this. Because you're a widow, you have to stand up for your rights, right? You have to say, this is not good enough. I am not going to be treated like this. Because before I'm a widow, before I'm a wife, before I'm a mother, before I'm a daughter, before I'm a daughter-in-law, I'm a woman.
True.
Let's celebrate that. Let's be empowered by that. And let's find strength in that. And I think the other thing is women have to empower women. Why are we looking at men to empower us? That's just not on. So we need to now, it's about women empowering women. It's about widows empowering widows. It's about women empowering widows.
I love that. I like that. That is 100% true. And I like what you said, that it's actually before you are even a wife, you need to be cognizant of the fact that you do not know what will happen in the future and you need to be ready for it. And I would also like all the young men and boys and unmarried men watching, also listen. If you find somebody that is your partner, you love them, you want to be with them, plan. If Shalini and her husband, Jeremy, had not planned, if there wasn't a financial kitty that takes care of, you need to plan. What if something happens to me and the wife? What will we do? What will happen to the children?
Absolutely.
What if something happens to me and I'm the husband? What will we do? What will happen to the children? What will happen to my wife? And I think that's one thing that must have really, really helped you and your husband individually, and then now when you got married. And in the end, it was unfortunate.
Yeah,
The planning helped.
it did. We were together a lot, but we also had very individual lives. My work, my friends, his work, his golf, his friends. But also when we were together, we were very much a team. And he definitely, we both planned, right? We planned for our deaths in that we had wills for each other. If I died first, he would be okay. He had life insurance that would pay off the mortgage. We really planned financially so that we would be okay. Right. But I think life is shorter, Susan. Life is fragile. I didn't think my husband was going to die till the moment he took his last breath. I was holding his hand and I was thinking, you're not going to die on me. You're just not going to die. You can't leave me. And then he did. He took his last breath. And in that moment, I went from being a wife to a widow. In 1 second, that last breath made me a widow. The only thing I would say is that I still don't see myself as a widow internally. I still think of myself as his wife, and I will probably die being his wife. Even if I do, when I move forward with another relationship, I will not get married again. For me, he will always be my husband. But in the eyes of society and in the eyes of the law, I am a widow. And so I must somehow embrace that without letting that define me. But it is about coming to terms. We box ourselves in these labels, right? Who labels us? We label ourselves. Legally, we're labeled. Society labels us. So we either embrace it, not fight it, but we don't let it define who we are. And so I don't let it define me. And for me, I believe that Jeremy died for a reason. He died to make me a widow so that I could be more sympathetic and have empathy for other widows. Because until he died, until I was actually in that position, Susan, I was like you. I didn't know anything about widows. I didn't know about International Widows Day, right? So it's about educating yourself. And I don't want women to go through what I went through to be educated about these issues. I want them just to have an understanding.
Right. I love that. And thank you for sharing that. Now, I started this interview by saying you are an award-winning author, and we haven't spoken about your books yet. So you have written several books. The book you released in 2019, the title is Online Dating at 40. And it says, The Knobheads, the Nut Jobs, and the Nice Guys. Amazing title. I love that. But you have a book that is out in 2020, which is Happiness. Is it simply a mindset shift? And it's a question.
Yes.
And I really like that. What happened with you when you were writing that book? Did you have moments when you were not happy? Then you were wondering, am I still mindful? What's going on?
Yeah, so it's interesting because it was a process really. So Always With You, my first book was written after my husband died, and I published it 1.5 years after he died. And it was very cathartic writing. It talked about our relationship, my depression, mindfulness a lot, spirituality, his cancer, his death. And then I came out of that, and at that time, it was about 2 years later, I decided I wanted to be happy again, but I didn't know how. So I decided I was going to find happiness in a man, because after all, Jeremy had given me happiness. So surely there was a man out there who was going to make me happy, right? So I went online dating. Yeah, you'd think that, right? So, so I went online dating, and I was in England at the time. And most people who know me, I think, Susan, you probably have got a feeling that once I decide to do something, I jump in there and do it with my mind and my body. I'm there. So in 7 months, I spoke to about 50 men, and I dated just over 20.
Wow.
7 months.
That is
there was one
word.
It was exhausting.
Like text and
I used to get neck ache because I was like this the whole time talking, right?
But it was good research for your book.
It was exactly that. I kept saying, this is research for my book. So there was 1 week where I had 5 dates in a week. I think there was one day where I had 2 dates, one at lunchtime, one in the evening. Yeah. It was so much.
Let me tell you something. I absolutely love that, because I personally have friends that have done that. Like, they decide, you know what, I'm going to go into this dating game hard. I think women in the modern day are realizing that man is not going to come inside your house and find you when you're locked inside your house. Okay? Like, that's not how it works. So you got to be out there. But I have a lot of friends who decided to do that. And then it gets so crazy. They actually do have a lunchtime date or a tea date and then a dinner date. And it's the same day. But it's got to be done. You got to do it.
I'm going to admit this for first time on national TV, right? I've never admitted it. I had a little book to write notes about everybody so I could remember who they were.
I was actually going to ask you, because there are 50 men, did you number them? Like, you're like, number one, number two.
Yeah. I'd be like, okay, went for this guy on this date, wore this, so I didn't wear the same thing on the second day and the third date. So it was as superficial as that, right? It was superficial.
Right.
And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun until it wasn't fun anymore. There was one guy who just said, look, you're getting too clingy. I don't want to have any more to do with you. And he literally in a restaurant walked up and walked out of the restaurant. And I thought, I don't want to be treated like that. And I'm allowing myself to be treated like that. And I'm looking for happiness in this man. And let's face it, out of 20 guys that I dated, I would say that most of them were nut jobs and knobheads, and there were maybe 2 or 3 nice guys. Right. And was it really worth putting myself through this? So I stopped dating and I decided to change my life completely. And one thing was I gave away most of my things. I closed my house up. I rented out and I started traveling the world. And I came to Kenya to be with mom and my sister here and my aunt here, who I'm living with in Nairobi. And then COVID happened and I ended up here anyway. But I believe that I'm meant to be here. This is where the universe has brought me. So I'm here. I'm very happy. I'm doing a lot of mindfulness work. But the happiness book happened just after that guy. No, the online dating, after he walked away, it literally in a week, I wrote the online dating book. I was so angry with him. I used that energy in the book. Published that. Yeah. Very honest, very open. I talk about sex. I talk about relationships. I talk about grief as well, and dating as a widow, dating as a woman over 40, which has all its own connotations.
It's a whole other thing.
A whole other thing. So I wrote about that. And then when I realized that nobody was making me happy and I had to find inner happiness, I started looking at 10 techniques that I was going to embody. And those 10 techniques really changed me internally. Right. And I began to get happy on not the happiness that a fleeting happy, you know, when you go and buy a pair of shoes and you're like, wow, that's amazing happy. Yeah. Not that, but a more inner deep contentment. And also, that's not to say I don't have bad days, because it's important to have bad days, because from pain, you understand positivity. From sadness, you understand happiness. So I will have days when I don't want to get out of bed, but that's okay. I'm happy with that. That's okay. That's part of the journey. Those 10 techniques I created have given me an equilibrium, a kind of resilience. So now when things come my way, I handle them a lot better. I'm much more mindful. And those 10 techniques I thought I want to share with people. And I believe that to get to happiness, and the purpose of life is to be happy. I believe it's to be happy. So to get to that happiness, that deep inner contentment, using these 10 techniques I wanted to share with people. So I published the book in March here in Kenya. It's on Amazon. It will be in local bookshops soon. Everything's been delayed because of COVID. Yes. But I was going to launch it here with a party and all. Again, that was all cancelled. But that will happen when the time is right. And I almost feel like it wasn't supposed to happen because I didn't know that many people in Kenya. Whereas now I'm getting to know a lot more people. So I'll be able to invite people like you, Susan, and all the presenters and everybody to it, which I wouldn't have been able to if I'd done it in March because I didn't know people. So everything happens for a reason. I really, really believe that.
I like that. And that's 100% true. Now, I've noticed our time is up already, unfortunately. But before you go, I would like for you to give a final takeaway to anyone who's watching us who still doesn't feel. They're just like, I don't know. I see people sitting and they're saying, they think it's yoga. I don't know what. So a final takeaway to everybody watching about what exactly mindfulness is and how it can help them. And then you can also let them know where they can find you on social media. And again, you can mention where they can find your book.
Great, thank you. So you see, that's the thing with mindfulness. People think it's you have to sit for an hour and meditate and om and chant beads and light candles. Take that all away. All mindfulness is about being in the present moment. Life is short. life is fragile. We spend so much of our life on autopilot. We spend so much of our life regretting the past. You can't do anything about that. Fearing the future. You can't do anything about that. We don't even know if we have a future. I don't know in 10 minutes what my future is. So what I want to say to you is live now. And to do that, practice mindfulness. And the easiest way to start practicing mindfulness, just 1 minute, is to focus on your breathing. And every time you have a thought come through your mind, just go back to the breathing. And you will find that you are living a more present, mindful life. And live life today. Enjoy life today. Don't be fearful, because fear is wasted energy. Guilt is wasted energy. Live today. Be compassionate, be tolerant, and make a difference. Make a difference to somebody's life every day in a small way. It might be that you just say thank you to somebody, or you send them a message you've not spoken to them in a long time. Try and make one small difference every day, and you will find that the differences will come back to you. That universe will send you gifts back tenfold. And that's really the way to live life.
I love that. Thank you so much, Shalini.
You can get me on @JustJoom on all the social media, Insta, Twitter, Facebook, @JustJoom, JustJoom. And I hope that everybody will still continue to tune in on Mondays to Thursdays, 7:30 on KTN to do the mindfulness hacks.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, Shalini. Have a wonderful, wonderful day and stay mindful.
Thank you, Susan. Take care, and thank you so much for this opportunity. Thanks to everybody as well.
Bye. Wow. So that was Shalini Balla Lucas, an incredible woman, an award-winning author and an entrepreneur, and the founder of Just Whom. She's a wonderful mindfulness meditation teacher. She's accredited as well. So yeah, today's conversation, I'm feeling mindful about it. I'm feeling good. But I do want to share and reiterate something that Shalini said that really hit home with me today for Surah's cut, and that is fear is wasted energy. Guilt is wasted energy. Okay? Enjoy your life today. Be present today. That is it for Conversations. My name is Susan Jaroge. I have been your host. You can find me on my social media on Instagram @Surah_common, on Twitter, @Jaroge_, and on Facebook, my page is Surah Common. Follow my TikTok as well @Surah Common. Now we're going to go on to the artist segment, and there's so much more, so stick it here on Life in Style, the virtual edition. Bye-bye.